Changes, Michael Gove moving from education, disappointing news for you or not?
Well, it's a big surprise and it's a disappointment. We've seen some concern already from Conservative home readers today that Michael Gove is one of the ministers not only who's a radical, he's associated with the Conservative right, he's been very innovative, but also someone who Conservatives, grassroots Conservatives, really love his free school reforms. So it is a shock, and regardless of what people are saying today, it's also a bit of a demotion for him.
Pick up one or two of the other changes for us and tell us why you think, for example, Philip Hammond's move to the Foreign Office is seen by some as a Eurosceptic gesture. Is that right or not?
Absolutely. I mean, Philip Hammond, along with Michael Gove, caused some trouble a few months ago when he said that if we didn't get enough in the EU renegotiation, then he would support leaving, something I would support, something a lot of our readers would support. So that's a heartening thing. People who are similarly Eurosceptic-minded are, however, concerned about, say, Owen Paterson being defenestrated from DEFRA. He was thrown out the window after only 2 years in the job, having, to be honest with you, put up with a number of crises, a lot of criticism, but not having got a huge number of things wrong.
Isabel, just to pick up then, we mentioned the fact, I think I said earlier on, that there are now 6 women who are allowed to attend Cabinet. I think it's 5 Cabinet Ministers and 1 other who's allowed to attend. To what extent is that going to really affect people's impressions of what Mr Cameron's been able to do?
Well, I think he's done his best here. He set himself a very high bar when he was in opposition by saying that he would like a third of his government by the end of his first administration to be women. He hasn't been able to achieve that, partly because he had far less to play around with right from the start than he wanted. But he's made a few symbolic changes here, and of course it is good to see new ministers around the cabinet table.
Do you think that people are right to be disappointed to see Michael Gove moving or not?
Well, he's such a sort of exciting figure for those of us at Westminster that get worked up about these things. I'm not surprised that there's disappointment in some quarters, but of course the teaching profession are heaving a sigh of relief. So, you know, there's some winners and some losers from all these moves. And
to pick up again on the Foreign Office move, which I mentioned there to Mark, and we'll come back to talk about the other shape of the other ministerial ranks in a second. Do you think that Philip Hammond represents a move towards the Eurosceptic right to the Foreign Office or not? Has that been overstated?
I don't think that has been overstated, and he himself has said very clearly that his focus is going to be on trying to achieve real change in a renegotiation process. Cameron needs to make that policy happen. He needs to be able to show that he's achieved real renegotiation. Otherwise, there's a grave danger that when we have this referendum, if we have it, we'll get a no vote, and he doesn't want that.
Isabel, thank you very much. We'll let you go because I know you have other things to do. Mark is still with me, and I'm just wondering at this stage, Mark, what do you make of the shape of this ministerial team as you look ahead to the next election? What is Mr Cameron trying to do here? Well,
this is very much an unforeseen symptom of having 5-year fixed-term parliaments. This is really, as Isabel was saying a little earlier, this is a campaigning reshuffle. It's a campaigning cabinet. People who, even in Michael Gove's, being dropped down to being chief whip, he's going to be on television much more. They're effectively changing the job of chief whip to give him a campaigning role for the next election. William Hague, as leader of the House, yes, he's not foreign secretary anymore, but he's already said that he's going to be helping to fight the next election. He's going to be going around the country, knocking on doors and speaking to people again. This is something which is a real change in the way we do government. And for a Prime Minister who famously disliked the idea of reshuffles, he found them uncomfortable and has desperately tried to avoid them. Once he's got his teeth into it, he's really had a properly set about them.
How will it affect the balance within the coalition itself? Because obviously there are no Lib Dems involved in this reshuffle, we know that. But when you look at the way that some of these jobs have changed and some of the portfolios have changed, do you think it's going to cause a little more tension in 1 or 2 areas or not? What's your reading of that?
Well, I think the Lib Dems probably went into today thinking, oh, well, we're not going to move anyone around, we'll be stable, let the Tories have a fight among themselves about it. But actually, I think they've been the quiet losers in this situation, as they have been in, it's fair to say, a variety of other situations in the last 4 years. All the focus is on what these new ministers are going to be doing. All the Lib Dem faces are the familiar old ones. They're still suffering from the problem of having almost no female MPs, never mind ministers. And people like Vince Cable, he now has a Conservative minister, Matthew Hancock, who's going to be sitting at the cabinet table, visiting these meetings, who's effectively the Conservative shadow business secretary.
OK, Mark, interesting to talk to you again after such a really eventful day. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Mark Wallace there, Executive Editor of Conservative Home. Now, everyone